video is by request. I have a student who wanted to know how to do these 80s retro type of graphics in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use to draw this type of artwork. Like we'll be learning how to make the grids and how to do the sun that's breaking up into the different lines, how to do some gradient text, like chrome looking text, and some glows and stuff like that. All right, let's get started. So let's open up Illustrator and create a new file. So go to Illustrator and choose New File. And we're going to want to choose a print document, and let's make it a letter sized. And go over here to the right hand side in the orientation, let's make it landscape. Color mode, we can just do RGB because we're just going to make digital files. And you can name this whatever you want. I'll name it 80s Retro. And you can leave the raster effects on 300 and say create. All right, and before we start, I want to reset my workspaces so that we're all looking at the same thing. So go to Window, Reset Essentials. When I do that, it makes my color palette over here white with a black stroke. It gives me properties, which we're going to use a lot. It gives me layers, which we'll use a lot. There's a few other things that I want to open though. So go over to Window, and let's open up Stroke. We're going to need to use that a lot. So let's put that over here. You know, you can dock it inside of these little things in here if you want. That was actually transparency, but we're going to use that too. And Stroke, you can drag that over there. So whenever you want to do Stroke, it's there. And let's open up Window, and let's see, we could probably do color in properties. Let's open gradient. That is definitely one that we're going to need. And I'll dock that over here. And I think that is good enough for now. If I have to open up any others, I will do that when we get there. Oh, I know what I want. Window, and we want to open swatches. So let's drag swatch panel over there, and we can close these other things. All right, let's get started with drawing. The first thing we want to do is open our layers palette, and let's create a new layer for, let's draw the sun first. That's a pretty easy thing to do. So let's open this up. We'll call this sun, and we're going to go over here to our ellipse tool and hold the shift key and drag out a sun. So we need a nice round circle like that. And then let's go ahead and take like little notches, lines out of it. That's how a lot of these 80s art suns look like. So let's get the rectangle tool, and what you're going to do is click on the outside, left outside of the circle, and draw a thin rectangle that goes way past it, something like that. And then you're going to get the selection tool, click on here, and notice how if I press the Alt key, it gives me a double arrow, or Option key if you're on a Mac, Alt on a PC. It gives me that double arrow. What that means is when I click and drag on something, it's going to give me a copy of it. So click and drag down another copy. If you hold the Shift key, by the way, it will keep it straight. So hold the Alt key and drag another copy down somewhere like that. And then, let me zoom in so you can see better. Then go over here to this very bottom dot and pull this down so that the next line is a little bit wider. Then again, get your Alt key, click on it so you see the double arrow, drag down another copy of it, and this time we're going to pull this down and make it even wider. Same thing, just keep repeating these steps until you get wider and wider, and then maybe one more, and we'll have it go all the way off the bottom. All right, and then you're going to select all of these by going over here to your selection tool and just drag a box around everything so it's selected. Let's go to Properties, and where it says Pathfinder, I want you to click on the second one. It says click to minus front. And what that does is it got rid of everything, all those lines that were on top of it, and now we just have this sun with these lines that kind of fade out and space out as we go. All right, let's go back to layers. So we have our sun. What I'd like to do now, before I get too far with drawing things, is let's make a color palette that we can use to colorize our art. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to draw that on layer 1. So I'm going to rename this colors. And I'm just going to start off by just drawing some rectangles. And I'm going to fill them with some different colors. Actually, I'm going to draw one, and then I'm going to do that trick where I hold the Alt key and drag a copy and just draw a few boxes where I can fill these with colors that I plan on using in my art. We'll start off with that many. All right, so we're going to fill these 4 little boxes that we made with some colors that we're going to use in our artwork. We can change it later and add more, but let's just get started with a few different ones. And what I want to do is show you how to make gradients, because this 80s artwork definitely has to have gradients in it. So we're going to click on that very first one and go over here to your toolbar on the left and click that very middle button. See how it says gradient? We have white there, the color, you have the stroke. We're going to click on gradient, and it's going to give us this black and white default gradient, and it's going to open up our gradient panel. And let's change this to 90 degrees there so that it fades from top to bottom. And let me show you how to start changing these colors. So there's a couple different ways. The first way is you can just double click on the first color and then open this up and go to RGB and pick a color. So I'm going to pick kind of a cyan looking color like that. And then I'm going to double click on this white and choose RGB and pick maybe kind of a pinkish purple color. All right, so that's how we made one of our gradients. Also, let's click on this and make sure there's no stroke. So let's go over to properties and make sure that the stroke is none. Where we're going to make a gradient, and we're going to do a little bit different way. So again, you can click on this and make a gradient, but we're going to change this, and let's pull this gradient out of there, and let's open up our swatches too. So what you can do is, I pulled both of these out of the docking area, by the way, so that I could use them separately. You can just drag colors down into the gradient thing, or if you want to get rid of a color, you can just take it and pull it down, and that gets rid of it. So I want to have another gradient maybe where we have pink and it fades to black. And let's add white in there. You can make these really close together because I'm going to kind of do a chrome effect. And I want this one to be white. I'm going to get rid of that second pink one, so I'm going to drag it down and maybe move this over here and change it to a darker cyan. All right, so there's one of my gradients. Once again, I want this to be at a 90 degrees, so it looks like that. All right, now let's click on this one and make another one, maybe one that we'll use in our sun. So let's click on that. I'm going to pull out these colors that I don't want and maybe put magenta in here and maybe like an orange color like that, and maybe end it with yellow and get rid of this white. So you can edit, how the colors blend by dragging these around. And once again, I'm going to make that a 90 degrees. And I need to get the black stroke out of these, so I'm going to go over there, stroke, take those away. I already have no stroke on that one. Click on this one and say stroke, none. All right, so I have 3 different gradients. Let me make one more. Maybe make one that's got more of a black in it, like I can use for the background. So let's get rid of all these other colors and maybe make it a blue to black. I think I want to make it more of a purple though. All right, that looks pretty good. Make it 90 degrees, and I can edit this some more as I go, but you get the idea. And then I want to make this stroke here none. All right, now that we have some colors made here, some gradients, let's go ahead and let me show you how to use them. So if we click on our sun graphic right here, and you can get the eyedropper tool and just click on whatever gradient you want. So this gradient really is not going the direction we want. So you can see this gradient tool, we have it going from side to side instead of up and down like we want. So if you go over here to the gradient tool and click on the fill, you can adjust the angle of it right here. So we're going to choose 90. And what it did is it made all this, each section have the gradient, you know, separately in it. I want it to just all flow through the whole thing. So I'm going to go over here, press G on your keyboard to get the gradient tool, and just click and drag one line all the way across the whole thing like that. If you want it to go the other way, you can start from the bottom and go up. All right, so now I have my sun. Let's go ahead and make another layer with the background in it. So let's click down here and make a new layer. We can call this back, and we'll pull it down to the bottom. And let's make a rectangle and just drag across the whole thing and get our eyedropper tool and make it this darker color here like that. And I'm going to go ahead and just lock this. All right, let's go ahead and start making some of the other elements. Let's make the grid that will go along the bottom now. So let's make another layer, and we'll call this one grid. And let me move all this up a little bit. And what you want to do is draw a series of really thin just lines with your rectangle tool. So I'm going to click and just draw a very thin rectangle, something like that. And let's make this just a magenta color. And what I want to do is copy it across the whole page. I'm actually going to move it outside of the page. And what I'm going to do is hold the Alt key to make a copy and hold the Shift key to make it straight. And I'm going to show you how to make a bunch of copies all the way across without having to do it one at a time. So let's close our swatches and gradient, get that out of the way. Get your selection tool, click on both of those. You can hold the Shift key to get both of those. They're both selected. We want to go over here to the blend tool. I'm going to double click on that, and let's make the steps about 50. I might need to change it and do it, but we can try that. And then once I've done that, I can click on one shape and then click on the other, and it puts copies of them all the way across. So I think 50 is probably a good amount. And then let's make another rectangle that goes across the very top of these and is about the same width. And this time, instead of using the blend tool, because I don't know exactly how many copies, I am going to show you another trick. Hold down the Alt key, drag down a copy while you're holding the Shift key until you get the distance that you want, and then let go. And now just press Control D, and it'll just duplicate that same thing that you did over and over again. All right, if it ends up not lining up at the bottom, you can, I'll show you how to fix that. It won't matter anyways, because it's going to get cut off the page. So let's get this grid that we drew and select all of them and do Control G, which is group. Object, group, Control G. Now when we click on them, it's all one thing. And I'm going to show you how to put it in perspective next. So go to Effect and go to Distort and Transform, Free Distort. And it's going to give us this window here, and it will let you pull out the corners so that we make this look like it's going in perspective. So just edit these corners however you want. It looks pretty good. And say OK. And before you do anything else, you need to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and one other thing, Properties, Pathfinder. Click on Unite so that now none of those lines are separate things. It's all one grid. Now we can reduce this because it's really huge. So click on it and just drag the corner to be smaller. You can even change the perspective by dragging it from the bottom like that if you want to. And so that looks pretty good like that. Don't worry about these other parts that are hanging off the edge. That'll get cut off when you export it. So we're fine there. If you want to fill these with a gradient, you can fill it with a gradient. Like maybe we'll pick the same gradient that the sky is in. I'm not sure I'm in love with that. I think I like a little bit more of a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to get the eyedropper and maybe click on that gradient. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave mine on that. I like to be able to see it a little bit better. If you want it to be just kind of somewhat transparent, you can just click on it and go to Window and click on Transparency. And you can change the blending mode like you do in Photoshop if you want, or you can just change the opacity and lower it down a little bit. All right, so you can experiment with that however you want. All right, now I'm ready to show you how to draw some palm trees. So let's go over to our Layers tab and make a layer for palm trees. Oops. All right, we're going to use the pen tool for this. So go over here and grab the pen tool. Press P on your keyboard to locate it. I'm going to zoom in a bit here. And I'm going to start at the bottom horizon here, and I'm going to click and make a point there. And I'm going to go up a little bit to an angle, not straight up, but not too far, somewhere like this. I'm going to click, but I'm not going to let go. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag out some handles so that I kind of get a little bit of curve to my palm tree. And then I'm going to click right here to end it. So make sure you click back on the point that you just made, then come out a little bit more, and just click and not drag. And then let's go down here and make sure you're a little bit farther away from the bottom because the base of the palm tree is going to be thicker, right? So we're going to click here and whoops, pull up a little bit, something like that. And then you want to click back on the point again so that you get rid of that bottom handle, and then click there to close the path. So notice how when I get close to it, it gives me that little circle letting me know that's the intersect point. I want to click there. So now I have my palm tree trunk, and let's just go ahead and change the color of that for now. We don't really want this gradient. I don't know what color it's going to be yet, but let's just change it to a different color for now. All right, so we have our trunk. Now let me show you how to draw the palm fronds that are going to go on it. So we're going to get the pen tool again. And since the 80s graphics are kind of angular, kind of low poly looking, we're just going to draw some lines here without dragging. Make sure you do not drag. You're just going to click and draw a bunch of these little palm frond branches, just like a bunch of triangles up and down. And we're going to close the path. Make sure you close the path. Wait for it to show you that little circle that's just to the right of the pen tool, and click there to close it. Now what you don't want to do is start your next palm tree drawing on an anchor point that you've already made. So to not do that, if you just click away from it a little bit, you'll be better off. Otherwise it will delete the point that you're clicking on if it's selected. So do the same thing, just draw some triangle shapes back and forth. Feel like the Bob Ross of 80s art. And then once again, I'm not going to click on that point because it will delete it. I'll show you. If I click on it, it will do that. So you want to undo that if that happens. Click just away from it. And let's make another palm tree, or another palm frond up here. And close it up. All right, now we're just going to click and drag and just move these palm fronds around. So you can click on one at a time. If you go out to the corner, you can see the little rotate thing. You can rotate it, move them around, shape the palm tree however you want. You can change the size of them. I think I'll make this one a little more angled, whoops, a little more rotated. Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. So I want to select all these and make them a group. So I'm going to go on the outside of it, click and drag around all the palm pieces and do Control G to group it. Now whenever I select it, I have the whole whole thing selected. So I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller and skinnier, so you can just size it by dragging the corner. And I'm going to make another one right next to it, so Control-C, Control-V, copy, paste. And this time I'm going to make this one like a little bit taller, kind of bigger, standing over it. If you want to change the palm fronds around, it won't look so copy and pasted. You can ungroup it by Control-Shift-G or Object, Ungroup. Then I can go back in and just edit each palm frond to look a little different. That way it won't look so copy and pasted, but you don't have to draw the same thing over and over again, you know? All right, now I want to make copies of these palm trees on the other side, and I want them to curve this way. So I'm going to take my Shift key and select on both of those palm trees and press Control-G. I've got them grouped now, so they're all a group, and go over here and double click on the Reflect tool. It might be behind your Rotate tool, or you can press O on your keyboard. Double click on it and it will pop up this window, and I want to reflect it on a vertical axis, and I want it to copy. So I'm going to press copy, and then it gave me another copy which I can click and move over to the other side. All right, now let's draw some mountains in here. So let's go to our layers palette, make a new layer, and name it mountains. And once again, we're going to get the pen tool, and I'm going to start over here on the edge of the page. I'm going to kind of make my mountains up higher here and go down into a valley and then back up. So let's start on the edge of this page, and you don't have to really do anything too fancy here. If you click and drag, remember it makes curves. If you just click and let go, it will just make harder lines. So I'm going to make it fade down into like a valley down here at the bottom, and then go back up. And then when I get to the edge of the page, I'm going to go down and hit right down there where the grid is. Click a line there and go across. I'm going to hold my Shift key to make a perfectly straight line. Click there, and then I want to go back and make sure that you close your path. See that little circle? Click there and close the path. All right, so now we have some mountains. I can actually take these palm trees and maybe pull them up a little bit higher so that they're kind of coming up over the mountains. All right, starting to look like an 80s graphic here. I want to show you one trick that will even really further enhance the 80s look, and that's to show you how to give some glows to some of these things. Let's do it to the sun right here. So let's go ahead and click on your sun layer. We're going to click the sun, and we're going to copy it, Control-C. Then we're going to go over here to Effect, and it has some Photoshop effects you can put in here. We're going to add this Gaussian blur. So click on that, and I have it at 46. Doesn't really matter, whatever setting you want to put it on, and say OK. And then I want to go to Edit, Paste in Place, and I put my sun back where it was. So now I have like the hard line graphic on top of the glow. All right, I want to show you next how to make like a reflection where these mountains would be reflecting on the grid. So let's click on our mountains. Once again, I'm going to fix that, make it go to the edge. Click on this, and then again, we're going to use the Reflect tool. So I'm going to double click Reflect. This time we're going to use a horizontal axis, so it gives you a little preview what it looks like there. And just say copy, because we want another copy of it. We want to leave the other one as it is. And we're just going to hold the Shift key and drag it below there. And then in transparency, we're going to use that again. You can just lower the transparency on that. You can change the color if you want to. It doesn't have to stay the same color. All right, and let's see, let me go to layers. Maybe if you want to draw just like a horizon line on there to give it a little extra punch, you can do that. What else can we do? You can also add some birds up here. So maybe I'll just do it on the mountains layer because it's going to be the same color as the bird. So if I want to use the same color that as something, I can just click on it and it'll pick that color in the picker. And then I can go over to my pen tool and just draw some little birds, some little silhouettes. Okay, let's see. If you want to change any colors, like let's say you're not happy with the gradient on your background or something like that, you can still experiment with that. So you could just open up, click on it here and open up your gradient panel again, and you can make changes to it. So let's say if you wanted the black to go down further, or you double click on it, maybe you want a richer black, you can edit the colors there. I think that looks a lot better, makes it have a little more punch to it. So you can always just click on your object and then click on gradient and move things around and change the colors to be more what you like. All right, so I was going to show you how to draw some chrome lettering to put on the top of this using this gradient that I made here, but I decided to save that for another video and instead just go ahead and finish out this piece of art. So I started drawing these lines off camera to kind of make like this low poly looking thing on top of the mountains, and I want to show you how you can do that. So if you go over here to your rectangle tool and go down to the line segment tool, you can push backslash on your keyboard to find it, and then go over here to your appearance, make sure you have no fill. You can pick any color you want. I'm using like the magenta and I have it set on 0.75, 3/4 of a point for my stroke weight, and my opacity I have it on 54. So what you can do with this line tool is just click and drag some lines and just make a bunch of triangle shapes that are connected together. All right, so one thing I did forget to tell you guys before I started doing that is I did make a new layer to draw these lines on. So make sure that you have those on a separate layer. I'll just call them lines. So when you're drawing these lines with the line segment tool, one thing I forgot to tell you before is when you draw one line, don't start to draw another line on top of it because it will just grab the end of it and try to make you move it. So when you're drawing a line and you want to make a triangle, just go to another part of the page that doesn't have something a line selected already. So like when I want to draw this line here, I'm not going to start on top of that dot. I'm going to go over here on the opposite side. All right, just so keep that in mind when you're drawing all these lines. Don't start right here or you'll end up grabbing the line instead of making a new line, which you can do that if that's what you want to do if you want to move it. But if you're trying to continuously draw these triangles, you need to start from a point that's not already selected. What I'm going to do is take this line that I drew here. Let me go to my layers, and okay, I have that on my mountains. I'm going to unlock my mountains layer. I'm going to take this little bar that I drew and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to go up here where my lines are and go edit, paste in place to put it back there, and I'm just going to make it a little bit wider to kind of cover up the very end of those mountains. All right, and let's see, I'm going to unlock all my layers for a minute and go to where I have my color palette thing that I made up. We can just go ahead and hide that layer. I don't need that. So I was thinking what else you can add to this is maybe like some spotlights that are coming out from behind the mountains. So we want to do stuff behind the mountain layer and actually behind the palm trees. So let's go on the sun layer and say new layer, and we'll call these spotlights. And you can use your pen tool to draw these, and you're just going to go behind the mountain back in here and just draw a line that goes up to the very top, and then move it over a little bit. So you're just kind of making these spotlights that are coming out from behind the mountains. Let's make them like a cyan color and lower the opacity so that they're kind of see-through. All right, we're getting close to being done. There's just a couple other little details I want to add. So I'm going to go over here and add one more layer, and we're going to name this Stars. And I'm going to pull this down below everything except the grid in the background. I'm going to go over here and get my brush tool and pick cyan or something really light. Actually almost a white color. And I'm just going to click some dots here. I'm only going to make a couple at this size that I have right now, and just a couple of bigger ones. And then I'm going to use my bracket keys on my keyboard and make some that are a little bit smaller. Just place them randomly, and then click my bracket keys a little bit more to make the brush have some really small dots. I want this bottom to be fading to black a little bit more. So I'm going to put this on the stars layer. I don't need a new layer just for that. And I'm going to draw a box that goes along the bottom. And I'm going to put a black gradient on there. So I want no stroke, but I want the fill to have a gradient. And I'm going to edit this gradient over here by changing that to white. So it goes white to black. And I'm going to rotate the gradient 90 degrees so that it's just black on the bottom, and then it fades to white. Let me bump up this black a little bit more. That should probably work. And then I want to go on transparency. If you don't have that open, remember it's under Window. You can open transparency. And I'm going to use these blending modes like we have in Photoshop, and I'm going to put it on multiply. That way it just fades everything to black at the very, at the very edge of the artwork. Okay, so now I'm going to type my name, and I am done with this. So don't forget to type your name. I'm going to go on the very top layer. You can put it on the bottom right-hand side. And we're ready to save this. So go File, Save, and that'll save an Illustrator file so I can edit it later if I decide to. And then I want to save a JPEG so you can put it in your portfolio. So go to File, Export, Export As, and choose JPEG for the format. And this is very important. Click Choose or Use Artboards. If you don't choose that, it's going to leave all this extra stuff that's hanging off the edge of your canvas. So make sure you say Use Artboards, and it will crop it off to the edge of your page. Say Export. You can leave the quality around 5 or 6. It's okay to leave the screen resolution at 72 for a website. That's fine. Remember, if you were going to print it out, you would want it to be high, but we are just going to have it on a website, so 72 is fine, and say OK.